Welcome back. You're watching this special CNBC TV18 series, PSB 2.0, Reinventing Public Sector Banks. We just spoke with one former Finance Secretary. We are joined by another former Finance Secretary, Dr. S. Narayan, and he has also been chairman of a private sector bank, Lakshmi Vilas Bank. So we have the best of both worlds with us, and of course, he teaches economics. Dr. Narayan, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Well, first up, if you heard what Mr. Ahluwalia was telling us, he says you can't tweak under the current Banking Companies Act. You have to bring banks under probably the Companies Act and bring down government stake. No hope of reform within the current legal dispensation. Do you agree?
Yeah, that is absolutely true, because the Banking Regulation Act 1969 and finally 1971 was enacted under very, very different circumstances, and the new Companies Act, particularly the 2013 Act, is also under very different circumstances. But let me just pause for a minute and let's look back. Let's look back to Let's look back to 1969 and look at the situation under which the banks were nationalized. The purpose of Mrs. Gandhi, because I was in government at that time, and the purpose which was there in the objectives of that act is that to bring rural lending, to reach banks to the rural areas, to increase credit availability to the poor. Now, somewhere after 1980, I would say after 1984, 1985, the banks changed their policy of lending to corporates into project financing. In the intervening years, the project financing was handled by IDBI, ICICI, IFCI, and for some reason after the, I would say, 1991 reforms, these development finance institutions were allowed to decay, and this role was taken on by the normal public sector banks. As a result, two things happened. One, they became project financiers, and two, the original intention of lending to the poor was given up. The poor represents a very small portion of the debt of the public sector banks today. So therefore, there has been some distortion in the development of policy towards the public sector banks over the years. So while we are addressing whether public sector banks should be privatized or not, I think there is also an opportunity to look back and say, can this distortion be corrected? Can the public sector banks go back to their original role of actually reaching out to the people, the needy people? So, Dr. Narayan, and look at an opportunity of project financing.
No, Dr. Narayan, therefore, are you saying that there is no need to change the law, bring down government stake, just give them a different goal, that of rural lending? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that the goals have been unnecessarily distorted because of the development financing institution were allowed to wither away.
Yeah.
And these banks today do not have the capability of making these project lending, which is the reason why they are in NPAs. So they are doing things which they are not geared to do. So why not take a first step? Okay, why? And this is what the Parliament would like as well. Let's not forget that the Parliament is also still consists of people from the rural areas, substantially from the rural areas, and who are looking at the banks from the rural point of view and not necessarily from the large borrowers' point of view. Therefore, I think it would be easily possible as a policy to first go back to the 1969-71 requirements and say, okay, this is what the banks were meant to do. Go back to it.
Okay.
And just to complete that, today if you take ICICI Bank, ICICI does not get into substantial project-based lending.
Yeah.
It does substantially more retail lending. So why can't the public sector bank go into that?
Yeah, but Dr. Narayan,
then the question whether then it needs to be privatized.
Yes. Yeah. That is my question, sir. What I'm asking you is, will you be happy if you just have a mandate from the government saying no more lending to project finance, only lend to rural areas? Will that really solve the problem?
No. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying, a policy evolution does not come from a single government order on one sheet of paper. Okay, it has to have the full support of the parliament. It has to have the full support of the government, and in fact, it has to have the full support of the banking system. All of these have moved away from the original policy. So therefore, the privatization, I would say, can come as a very, very much of a second step, as it came in the case of ICICI. It became a private bank. Okay. Long ago, it was also part of the government. So allow the privatization to evolve rather than to confront the politicians with a saying that go below 51, go below 40. Okay. So I would say an evolution of policy towards removing distortions is what is most important now.
Okay. Well, let me, I have to conclude. So my last question to you, what do you see as the process then? You don't change the Banking Companies Act at all? Keep the legislative structure as is? I mean, how will it help if you just said that public sector banks don't... what exactly is your game plan?
Latha, these are different.
Okay.
These are different issues because today the Banking Regulation Act is constrained by the New Companies Act.
Okay.
So it is very important to make changes in the Banking Regulation Act which would free itself from some of the burdens which the Companies Act places on it. These changes in the Act are necessary to enable these changes in direction as well as future changes in reduction in equity. Okay. So I am not running away from changing the Act, but I am saying the purpose of that change should be very strategic to say, in 2 years I'll be here, 3 years I'll be here, in 5 years I'll be there, rather than going and saying I'm going down to 51%, I'm going down to 40%. That alone would be, I think would not pass Parliament.
Okay. Let me quickly check out what you mean by from 2 years I will be here, I will be there. What kind of goals are you setting the public sector banks?
Okay, suppose you set a medium-term goal of saying that I will handle all the privatization in 3 to 5 years' time.
Okay.
And then you work back saying, in order to get that through Parliament, Act change is necessary. What need I do? I need to change the direction of lending in the banks and gain the confidence of the people that the banks are serving the people and not a few corporates alone.
Okay.
And therefore, I need to create some, perhaps, go back to revisit and say, State Bank will be the main development finance institution. Okay. And other banks will not do development financing.
Okay.
So change the direction, watch the flow, and meanwhile deal with the stress which is there now. In the middle, you have to deal with the stress.
Yes.
Give it time, and then go for the change.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, Dr. Narayan, just as it was hotting up. But
I think a path.
But, sorry, we will have to leave it at that, out of time completely. But Dr. Narayan's point is that parliamentarians will not agree to bringing down stake below 51%, and therefore you probably have to give some functional specialization to banks, some development finance and some doing rural and other kinds of retail lending. Well, that's a plan, but a clarion call coming from both our experts that the current dispensation won't do. We are wrapping up this first edition of BSB 2.0 with the promise that we are going to get a whole host of experts to discuss how we should redesign public sector banks. Thank you for watching.